Okay, welcome back to Happy Hour with Heather and Guest, episode number 65. This is going to mark a little bit of a change in the format, although we're still going to give you tremendous insight on tasty jams and whatnot. But now that the weather is warming up a little bit, I'm back by my desk. Hence, you won't see the posters behind me. Instead, you'll see that door. I honestly don't know where that door goes. So maybe Geezer Butler will pop through that door and start playing some riffs. Who knows? Actually, no, I'm just kidding. That goes to my boiler or the air conditioning unit or whatever. But either way, I am joined as usual by Heather, who lends her name to the show.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be talking about a couple different things. We're going to discuss the doom category of metal, which is what sort of initially bonded Heather and I when we found out we both liked mostly doom metal bands. And then your suggestion was to discuss the band Grajo from Spain.
Yeah.
So you want to offer up anything about doom in particular?
Well, I like the fact that Doom is both of our favorites. I think, and I there's so many different subgenres of Doom, which I thought would be kind of fun to dive into. So and I want to find out. I want to find out too, like, what is your favorite subgenre of Doom? I know you like Doom, but I don't know what your favorite subgenre is. But these are the ones that I came up with.
Well,
Uh,
before you jump in, maybe
yeah.
I could give the Wikipedia definition of what doom metal is, and then that way people who aren't familiar have. So doom is an extreme subgenre of heavy metal music that typically uses slower tempos, low-tuned guitars, and a much thicker or heavier sound than other heavy metal genres. Both the music and the lyrics are intended to evoke a sense of despair, dread, and impending doom, probably where it got its description from. The genre is strongly influenced by the early work of Black Sabbath, who formed a prototype for doom metal. During the first half of the 1980s, a number of bands such as Witchfinder General and Pagan Altar from England, American bands Pentagram, Saint Vitus, The Obsessed, Trouble, and Cirith Ungol, and Swedish band Candlemass defined doom as a distinct genre.
Yeah. And it's funny how they say that it it invokes a sense of doom, but when I listen to it, it's like the opposite effect. When I listen to it, it actually makes me feel better, you know. And I think it's the frequency, because it's a lower tone and it has that repetitive, a lot of it is repetitive and that low tone, and I think it's the frequency of it where I just connect with it and it makes me feel better.
Yeah, I feel like with a lot of things, and this is sort of going to go arm in arm with like Saint Jung's concept of synchronicity. Sometimes you can't really find logic in these connections. Like it would seem counterintuitive that music that's supposed to lyrically be about despair, dread, or impending doom would make you feel better. But again, it doesn't. It's not supposed to make sense. It's emotional, so
Yeah.
it could be tonal, it could be frequency, it could be all of these things. I tend to look at it just being grateful that it's kick-ass music.
Yeah. 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 And there's the traditional doom, like what like our godfathers of doom, Black Sabbath. That's the traditional doom, which you know bands still play today, the traditional doom. And then there's funeral doom, which a good example of that I think would be Bell Witch, and Bell Witch, on a side note, they have one of the greatest album covers of all time on their album.
Which one is that?
Oh gosh, I don't remember the
Is it
name.
what is it a theory? Is it the one with the mountain, so the face in the mountainside that looks like?
The face that's coming through.
Yeah, yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to say I mean I'm confusing it with a cathedral album named Ethereal
Oh,
Mirror, I think. But
oh, here oh, what is it? Yeah, it is mirrors in the title. Yeah, I can't place the name of it
yeah,
right.
it's fine. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah. Um, Doom Gaze, which is my favorite. Doom Gaze, which like Pale Horse, Pale Rider is a really great example of that, which we've talked about before. Stoner Doom, Sleep, which I think is one of both of our favorites. Psychedelic Doom, which would be like Resin, which we talked about. Wait, Death Doom, like an example of that would be like My Dying Bride. Black Doom, Catatonia, Gothic Doom, like Typo Negative, Drone, like a band like Earth, Sludge, which the Melvins, which I think we're both big fans of. Atmospheric Doom, there's a great band out of Chicago called Flesh of the Stars. They play really great atmospheric doom. And then there's progressive doom like Varaha. Can you think of any others?
I'm sorry, you broke out. It broke up a little bit with the last.
Oh, progressive doom like Varaha.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah. And then atmospheric doom.
yeah.
Can you
By
can you think of
by the
any
way,
others?
before you, I mean, well, there are two. First, there was a movie that came out a couple years ago called Knocked Up with Seth Rogen,
Uh-huh.
and the website he and his friends are trying to create is called Flesh of the Stars. So
Ah.
I wonder if perhaps that's where the band got the name, or um, yeah, the website is supposed to let you know at what point in films do characters get naked. It's called
Oh.
Flesh of the Stars.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
maybe it's just a coincidence. I don't know.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is there are so many different subgenres. I can't really think of very many other categories, but
Yeah.
half those categories I feel like were created to give people something to argue about. So,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Like a band like Earth is, I mean, they're a drone doom band, so that makes sense to have that category for them.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say, and for I think you had asked what my personal or you the question was what, because you had said doom gaze is your favorite. Um,
Yeah.
I would say probably at this point Stoner Doom is
Okay.
my favorite. I mean, I, Sleep is probably my favorite contemporary band that's playing. Although I do love Melvins, so I would think probably probably a mixture of the sludge and stoner doom. And the holy trinity would probably be traditional doom, stoner doom, and sludge. Those would
Yeah.
be that would
Yeah.
be my holy trinity since today is Easter.
I tend to gravitate more toward I like the psychedelic doom, the atmospheric doom. I tend to gravitate more towards that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if I think a lot of the time it depends on the band.
Yeah.
I think as genres, I tend to be more drawn towards those three. But at the same point in time, I'm not going to change the station if a band that I like from a different genre comes on. I'm
Yeah.
not so close minded.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and there are elements of progressive doom that I really like, elements of psychedelic. There are elements that I really enjoy. Like when in the past when we've reviewed bands that I'm not familiar with, and they can combine a lot of these qualities into their songs. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of like learning about the different, subcategories because it helps me personally. It helps me to understand, you know, um, it helps me get it a little bit better about what their music is all about and where they kind of fall into, the big picture. What I like about it is, like, when I listen to a band that I really like and I find out what the genre of music is that they play, then I'm like, oh, I want to try to find other bands that are in that same, you know, subgenre. And that has actually helped me find a lot of bands just doing that.
Yeah, well, when I mentioned that they exist to give people something to argue about, usually that's um, a small group, like a small group that just loves to argue. You know,
Yeah,
the distinction between categories is very helpful.
yeah,
If you're trying to categorize sort of where these bands fit in the grand scheme of things, but also to find other bands that play similar music.
yeah.
So,
And that's how I kind of got into Doom, at first, was just by, listening to bands that are in other categories. And that's how I got into Doom in the first place.
yeah, I mean, that's how I discover new bands today is by doing usually a YouTube spelunking where I'll just let the algorithm present me with something, but um, but it
Yeah,
knows the algorithm knows, based on my previous excursions, like what to send me. So,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it's I mean it's interesting because if you think about it, like a lot of other types of metal are combinate like thrash, for example, I think is like punk and new wave of British heavy metal sort of combined with doom. And if you think about like there's so many different like progressive is almost jazz combined with doom. It's just a
Yeah,
lot of these
yeah,
interesting things. So
yeah.
doom
It
has
definitely,
its place.
it definitely makes it more interesting.
Sure,
Yeah, yeah.
sure. But I also think, and I was gonna, uh, I can share my screen. There we go. Share screen. Never mind. I'm not going to share the screen because there's too many reconfigured things. But I was going to suggest, like, if you think about Doom, I always think about Doom being on a spectrum. And on one end, you've got a band like Saint Vitus, who is more toward like they're still not sludge, but they're more towards like Saint Vitus and Melvins are more toward the kind of like lower end, slow, sludgy type stuff. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got like the really piercing operatic vocals, and the riffs are much more high frequency. Um,
Yeah,
you like the Witchfinder Generals or stuff like that. Um, so and all these bands fall in that spectrum, in somewhere on that spectrum. But it's really helpful to know, like, okay, Candlemass is going to be much closer to the piercing operatic vocal, riff stuff than the low end Melvin's kind of sludge.
yeah. And I like too discovering what I've discovered through the years of listening to all the different doom bands is there are way, way, way more than I ever thought there were all over the world. There's so many doom bands and there's so many different variations of what they play. And it's just incredible.
Yeah, well, I mean, even a lot of the contemporary bands who are in the scene that you and I are friendly with, like Grave Next Door from Michigan and Titanosaur from New York. Like these are essentially doom bands with more like Titanosaur is a little bit more. I wouldn't suggest it's just doom, but there are definitely elements within that, and same with Grave Next Door. Um, so it's such a pervasive genre that so many people dabble in.
Yeah.
And you're right there. I mean, there's all over the world. There are probably hundreds of unknown doom bands that are playing right now.
Yeah, yet to be discovered.
Yep. And you're wearing like you've got a Beastmaker tee on.
Yes.
They're a great doom band, and I'm rocking a Slow Green Thing.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah, both these bands are excellent. Excellent doom bands. Yeah.
so speaking of another excellent doom band, you want to discuss Grajo
Yeah, from Spain.
from
Yeah,
España?
and their self-titled album came out in 2016. The song I Am the Sea, that's the first song on the album, and that is the song that got me. I was just like, when I heard that song, I was just like goosebumps. It is such a phenomenal song. And you wouldn't think that angelic vocals like that would go along with doom music. Like on paper, it doesn't seem like it would work, but it does, and it works so well. Um, that's why I still think of this record, 7 years later after it was released. That's how great it is. The fact that they're from Spain got me really looking and doing a deep dive into other bands that are from Spain, and some that you might know, Red Eye, Wild Fuzz Trip.
I'm not familiar with that. I've heard of Red Eye.
Okay.
I think we may have. Did we talk? We may have talked about them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
I don't know if it's Hela or Hela, Hela, Hela.
I'm not sure.
Um, Wild Fuzz Trip, Horn of the Rhino.
Okay,
Um,
that I know.
yeah, Saturna.
Saturna I've heard of. Yes.
Yeah, I thought maybe you might have heard of some of those. So
Some of them, yeah. It's interesting because it's like it is such a huge scene in terms of like how far it stretches around the world, but it's also a very small scene in terms of like these are most of the bands you've mentioned are bands I've heard of, or a lot of them are, I should say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And awesome that I heard of that.
Oh, you're kind of frozen.
Yeah. Can you see me now?
I can't. I can hear you, but you're just a picture. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now you're kind of back.
Okay. Yeah,
Well,
so
you make do with what you can.
yeah. Well, that's what, like listening to a band from Spain, that's what kind of got me realizing that there are bands that we like, doom bands, all over the world, all over the world. And that made me more interested in learning about bands, more bands from different countries. And now with the internet, we can, because we have access. So now we can listen to bands that are all over the world. You know, um, the spacey, psychedelic, and sometimes bluesy elements, along with the vocals, I think, is what makes this really stand out. I think it's pretty accessible too. I think people that listen to other kinds of heavy music, I think they would enjoy this too.
Yeah, I listened to both. Um, I guess the first album I think may have like four songs on it, and the second one may have six or eight. Uh, but I listened to, and yeah, it's interesting because I remember like at one point when I discovered the album "Dope Smoker" by Sleep, and it was one 60-minute song. And I remember it took me about 15 listens before it finally made sense, before I was finally
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. Because it is pretty if you're not a fan, it can be, and even if you are, it can be inaccessible. Like if you need to find the right entry point. But yeah, no, that's one of the things that's so great about Grajo is that it's great music that's accessible, I think, to anyone. You don't
Yeah.
need to be in a certain frame of mind. You can just sit down and listen. It was also interesting to see how they sort of continued to develop into the second album. It seemed not different, but perhaps a little bit more complex in what they were trying to do. So that was really cool. But I thought it
Yeah.
was a great recommendation.
Yeah, they had more of, I think they had more of the there was more of the progressive, type things, and I love that heavy dense sound, which they definitely have.
Yeah, and you had met, I also think one of the distinct differences with Doom is if you have the soaring angelic vocals or not. And usually the soaring angelic vocals go more with the higher, the riffier type stuff. Not so much the kind of sludgier, drony things happening. Um, that's not a hard, fast rule, certainly, but that's what I've noticed tends to happen. But
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I really dug, and I think I had brought this up before we started recording a couple days ago that I had done an episode about Grajo for A Fistful of Faithful, but I forgot what song I talked about. So, and it was like rediscovering them again.
Yeah.
It was
And
really,
one thing I like about our show is that we listen to the whole album, because I'm an album, myself personally, I'm an album person. I like sitting down and I like listening to the whole album. And that's one thing I like about when we talk about bands and our show is listening to the whole entire album, which I think is it's a really unique and, for me, pleasurable experience.
yeah. Well, I think I've not that I've spoken to a lot of musicians, but many of them I know when they're writing an album, it's meant to be listened to as a whole. I think it's great if you have a track that you really like. I mean, that's wonderful. There's nothing better than finding a great jam that you enjoy. But a lot of times I've noticed that like the songs are supposed to be listened to 1 through 10, in order because it's telling a story or it's providing some kind of arc. Um, so yeah, so it's good. I definitely won't fault you if you're just picking and choosing as you go. But
Yeah,
but again, a lot of times I feel like these are stories meant to be told in a certain way.
yeah, yeah.
So
It does seem like a lot of albums do tell a story.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah. One complaint I hear a lot about doom music is that it's too boring. And I would have to say that there's a lot of variation, here with these albums. There's a lot of variation, especially with the guitars and the vocals, and there's theremin. There's a lot of variation. It's not the same repetitive thing over and over and over again. Definitely not boring.
not at all. And even I want to make sure that I credit the person who said this. There's a great documentary that's on YouTube, so it's free, so you can watch it. And I believe it's called "Some Horses, Some Hounds," but it's about sort of like doom and heavy metal and stuff like that since the '70s. And he's talking about Dope Smoker, and he says sometimes the riff is so good You just want to hear it over and over again, sometimes for 45 minutes.
Yes.
And it's like, certainly there are elements to it where you want it to be more progressive or jazzier, like you want it to go outward and make turns and like follow it on a journey. And sometimes you just want to hear the same riff for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And you just get into a hypnotic, state. So I would agree, whether or not it's a valid complaint about the repetitive nature, like sometimes I sit down looking forward to the repetitive nature
Yeah.
because that's what I want to hear. I want to hear the same riff for
Yeah.
45 minutes because it's that awesome.
Yeah. And that I'm in the same boat you are. That's the whole reason that I like doom music. I like I love those repetitive riffs, and like you say, it puts you in like a trance. It's like trance like, it's like meditation. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about it the most.
Absolutely. So, did you have anything else you wanted to add about Grajo or Doom?
Well, I haven't heard anything about them for a while, and I think I did see that they are working on some new music. So I think that's great, and I have no idea when it might be coming out, but I'll definitely be looking for it when it does
Yeah,
come out.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That'll be cool to see what they've been up to.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then next Sunday we'll have it's my turn to suggest, and I found a band from Australia who I thought would be good. Uh, I'm guessing the music is probably really good, just because it oftentimes is. But the band name is Death by Carrot. So I was like, we have to talk. If there's a band called Death by Carrot, I've got to find out what they're up to. So
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be interesting because I've never heard any of their music.
I,
So,
I haven't. I know they're from Australia, and
yeah.
I think they're doing pretty well because I think they're either midlining or headlining shows. So we'll see. But with a name like that, I was like, I gotta know what they're about.
Yeah.
So cool. All right. So next week, Death by Carrot. This week
Yeah.
was Grajo. Go check them out.
Yes,
And,
definitely.
and as always, thank you. I will see you next week.
Okay. See you then.